Hello everyone, this is Jack. Because I believe that there's a heaven, does this mean that I'm not living my life to the fullness? Does my belief in heaven mean that I'm not engaged in living this life as much as I possibly
I've always
can?
been baffled by religious people who seem to think that life can only have any sort of value whatsoever if we are just this one specific thing and can't be anything else. So we can't just be these biological machines. We can't just be
a sack of meat.
Yeah, we can't just be meat computers walking around doing stuff. No, we have to somehow be these little angels in training or whatever it is we are, just imbued with some sort of special magical substance that will go on after we die and live forever in happy land or whatever. I've always found that really, really strange. Like your life, I mean, you're living it right now, okay? And what gives meaning to your life it seems to me it would be the same thing either way, right? Whether we had souls or not. You know, you have achievements, you determine what your goals are, you have interpersonal relationships with your family and your friends. All the things that you do in your life, that's what sort of brings value and meaning to your life. And I think that this is certainly one of the more insidious things about religion, definitely about Christianity, is that, what I see about religion is that it really is all about breaking down the individual self-esteem in order to reconstruct that sense of self-esteem with the religion at the center of it. Mm-hmm. And it says, now, without this, you're nothing. Yeah. Whereas, you know, until that idea was really programmed into the heads of believers, they would have had no reason to think that any more than anything else. I think it's pretty amazing that I'm this incredible biological machine that can do all sorts of stuff and do it very effectively and efficiently, that I'm the product of eons of evolution. I find remarkable. And that appreciation of just life itself is stolen away from religious people.
One of the things that Chris said in an email that I addressed is this idea about the meaning and value of a life. Meaning and value are things that we imbue, characteristics that we imbue upon objects, including ourselves. But the theist has this idea of some grander meaning, as if there's some other intelligence out there that would value us, and that without this other intelligence valuing us, we are worthless, that this is all irrelevant, which I find
well, they see
very sad.
Meaning as being something that has to be externally imposed upon your life.
Yeah, I find that very sad. It reminds me of the people who a psychologist might evaluate somebody who's in that position in a relationship as having dependency issues or validation issues where they can't do anything unless there's some approving figure to do this. But what Chris said, which kind of got my dander up, was that his view is that this life, this existence that we have, is all ultimately meaningless, even in his view. That the pain here is temporary, and that at some point you're going to graduate from this existence and go on to a better existence or whatever else, and what you suffered here will really become negligible and irrelevant. And I find that to be one of the most appalling ideas I've ever heard, that you believe, not you, and not necessarily Chris, because his theology is not very specific, and I don't want to get into too much detail without him actually being here. But there are people who believe that there's this God thing that created your soul thing, and then stuck it here in this meat sack machine thing for a period of X number of years to
judge whether or not it's worthy to go on to what next phase of its existence. Yeah.
If you really believed that was the case, then you should kill yourself. Now, and hang on, hang on. Don't actually do it. I'm not advocating that anybody do this. What I'm saying is that if it was somebody's sincere belief that this existence is relatively meaningless and it is a place to wipe your feet before you go into the happy land, then the natural, logical conclusion from that is that the best thing you could possibly do is kill yourself. And religions know that this is the logical conclusion, which is why some of them have direct prohibitions against suicide.
Yeah, they figured that one out pretty early.
That was really of it. Well, wait a minute. If Happy Land is where I really want to be and all of this is irrelevant, then if I kill myself and I go there now, oh, no, you don't get there if you kill yourself.
Yeah, because it's like God decides when you go. You don't get to decide when you
Yeah,
go.
they had to add a loophole in there because, it's painfully obvious to anybody. So for these people who've made up their own theology, who have these ideas that don't, where their doctrine or their beliefs don't include a prescription against suicide, I think it's painfully obvious that they actually do not believe what they claim to believe. They just hope that it's true. They just hope that there's something more than this. And while I think on some level it's fine to hope for more, on another level, it's not so fine. Because every minute that you spend hoping for something more is this minute that you're not spending appreciating what you do have, the one and only life you have.
Relatively smart, race, right? We're a relatively smart species, and one of our sort of curses of being smart is that we're able to contemplate our own futures. And sometimes those futures aren't very pretty. Sometimes, we will contemplate the fact that we're going to be dying eventually, and we as a species are going to die out eventually, and maybe sooner, maybe later. And certainly our planet will die because the sun will engulf it someday. That's just the sort of way it is. And I guess the way I would combat it is to focus on what you can do now in the finite lifetime you have. To maybe help out other people, or, I struggle with this. How do you come up with something? How do you have a legacy that lasts, right? And you can do that through children. You can do that through creating things. You can do that through the influence you have on other people. But it's just part of reality. It's just, in a sad way, we're lucky we can contemplate our future, but it's not that pretty.
There's kind of two ways to look at this, and it could be along the lines of, I could sit around and be depressed every week that this show is going to be over. And one of the ways to compensate for that is the idea that next week I'll be on, well, actually next week I won't, but in the future there's a good chance that I'll be on the show again. Yes, that's one way to deal with it, and that kind of is analogous to the idea that after I'm dead, the things that I've done may still matter to somebody else. However, there's no sense avoiding the fact that one of these days I'm going to have my last show. It's going to be my last show ever. And I could, realizing that I'm going to have a last show, let that bother me. Instead, I choose to try to do what I can to make sure that I enjoy the shows that I have and that they're as good as I can do. And the same thing is true for my life. One of these days, I'm going to be dead. And rather than worrying about that eventuality or being depressed that eventually it's going to be over, and this can be extended right up through the heat death of the universe. Yep, eventually the universe is going to be a cold, desolate place with nothing going on, and in that sense, in nothing that anybody will have ever done will have ever mattered. Well, not will have ever mattered. Nothing will matter then. But it will still matter at the moment, and that is the point. And that's what Don was saying about focusing on now. The idea that just because eventually something becomes meaningless, worthless, valueless, doesn't mean that it's meaningless, worthless, or valueless now. I have, a car. It was worth something when I bought it. It's worth something now. Eventually, it will sit in a junk heap, and it may be worth something to some collector, junk man artist, and eventually it will return to the elements from whence it came, and it will essentially be worth nothing. But what it's worth now is what's important. It's like saying that it's, I guess, this idea of feeling overly depressed that the universe will eventually end or that your life will eventually end is, I kind of look at it as a bit like trying to have your cake and eat it too. It's just, as Don was saying, it's just the way it is, and it's not necessarily a pleasant or happy thought, but it doesn't have to be anything that ruins your day. Religion offers potential solutions to this. Some religions do. There's obviously no reason to think
they offer
that they're
satisfying
true.
answers at the expense of truth.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm actually kind of I debate how satisfying some of those answers actually are. But I don't want to get derailed onto a big, long conversation about whether or not eternal life is of any value at all. But anyway, well, we appreciate the call, Neil. Thanks a lot.
You're very welcome. Thanks very much.
Yep. See, your call's over now. You knew eventually the call was going to be over.
Oh, no.
But you can enjoy the fact that you called. But actually, it may be time for a decent Mark Twain quote, because people had asked him if he was bothered by what was going to happen after he was dead, or if he was afraid of death. And paraphrasing, he said something along the lines of, I was dead for 1 billion years before I was born, and it didn't trouble me, so I don't see what being dead after I'm dead is going to trouble me.
Didn't inconvenience me in the least.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't have to, whether it's the majority doing it, whether it's out of comfort, adopt this standard method of, I'm so uncomfortable with not knowing that I'm going to accept some answer even though there's no good reason to accept it. That's not the way to go about things. There is a better way. When people say, well, all you do is rail against religion, tell us what's so good about atheism. Well, first of all, as I mention every time, it's not a dogma, it's not a religion, it's not a philosophy, it's not a way of life, it's a response to theism.